Welcome friends, welcome to the analysis of Civil Services Main Mock Test 2 for General Studies Paper 2. Friends, as you know that according to the new pattern, General Studies Paper 2 comprises of following sections: Governance, Constitution and Polity, Social Justice, India's international relations, and other international issues. So as we can see here, the breakup of the following sections as 13 questions from Governance, Constitution and Polity. All questions were of 200 words and 10 marks each. Thus we can see that 13 questions fetch 130 marks in all for Governance, Constitution and Polity. In other words, we can see that this section was the most important part of paper 2. Now we come to social justice, 5 questions, each question of 200 words, 10 marks for each question, thus 50 marks in all. And other, the third one, India's international relations, 6 questions, each of 200 words and 10 marks each, thus 60 marks in all for India's international relations. And the last one, international issue, single question of 200 words and 10 marks. Thus we can see that 25 questions here in GS paper 2, mock 2, 250 maximum marks allotted for this paper. Friends, further we can see that there are some questions which have analytical, notion and orientation of the answer, and others are information based questions. You have to write the answer accordingly, means on the dependence of the language of the question. If it is explain, discuss, critically analyze or analyze, there is variation in the answer. The questions which are just information based, they are simply with language, discuss in detail or explain, while the questions which are based on the analysis, the question is clearly mentioned with language, critically analyze or analyze. One more important thing, that you have to strictly follow the word limits. In paper 1, mock 1, we have seen that candidates are not following word limits. 5 to 10% variation of words is applicable, but not more than that. That only bring you the penalty marks. So here the notion of the CL mock test series is to make you disciplined also. This was the introduction session of this part, and now we bring the further analysis starting from question number 1 up to question number 25. Okay friends, here is the question number 1. The Planning Commission of India played a leading role in the economic planning of the country after independence, but consequently its decisions caused political disputes also. Evaluate the Indian government's decision to replace the Planning Commission with a new body. Definitely, as we can see, the language of the question is evaluation of India's decision to constitute or to replace Planning Commission with a new body. 10 marks, 200 words. Here we can see that we can give introduction of this question in a single or 2 lines. We know that Planning Commission was set up in 1950 and first 5-year plan was launched in 1951. After independence or just after independence, India needed to be modernized, or it was a country based on agricultural economy. Rapid industrialization and rapid change in agriculture was the need of the time. For that purpose, the Planning Commission was constituted. Though it was neither a constitutional or a statutory body, it was advisory body in nature. But after 64 years, the situation has been changed drastically. Here we can see that in his speech on Independence Day 2014, incumbent Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that the 64-year-old vestiges of the socialist era, that is the image or definition of Planning Commission. So we have to change or to inculcate a new body to address the current economic challenges and strengthen the federal structure. We have to push the development pro states, and that body will be a new body with a new soul. The internal environment and global situation has been changed, so now have to provide more emphasis on the states. Moreover, the envisioning the proposed institution as one that caters to the aspirations of 21st century of India and strengthens participation of the states. This is the prime focus to constitute a new body. Now here comes the question number 2. Though the Indian Constitution does not provide for the office of the Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha, however, its role in the Indian democratic system is significant. Discuss. Here we have to discuss the question. It means we can divide the information and analysis of the question in 50-50 ratio. First of all, though the post of opposition leader in Lok Sabha is not mentioned in Lok Sabha, is not mentioned in Constitution as well, but still it is the constructive and cumulative participation of opposition for which opposition chooses a leader. After the constitution of the recent Lok Sabha, we saw a spat between the ruling party and the opposition party to choose or to elect the leader of opposition. The leader of opposition is assigned with a rank of cabinet minister, and his post has been created under the salary and allowances of leader of opposition in Parliament Act 1977. Moreover, he is the leader of officially recognized opposition party in the House or the second biggest party in the House. Apart from it, he enjoys various ranks and various services also. He is the member of different commissions like National Human Rights Commission, Chief Information Commissioner's Office, Central Business Commissioner, Lokpal, etc. Some committees like Public Account Committees are unfulfilled without the position of Leader of Opposition. Leader of Opposition checks arbitrary actions of the executive not only in the House but of the government also. Meanwhile, at times he criticizes the government policies and he puts the part of the opposition party in the parliament. So we can see that the leader of opposition plays a role of balance of power in Lok Sabha, and though its position is not mentioned in Constitution, but it has very important role in Parliament. Question 3. The Sarkaria Commission was constituted to review the relationship and balance of power between state and central government in the country and suggest changes within the framework of Constitution of India. Examine the recommendations made by the Commission on appointment of the governor of a state. First of all, some information about Sarkaria Commission. It was constituted in June 1983. Its charter was to examine the relationship and balance of power between center and state. R.S. Sarkaria, a retired Justice of Supreme Court, was its head. Its role was especially to review the role of governor and Article 356. Apart from it, when we talk about Sarkaria Commission and the role of the governor, the most important part is that governor should not belong to any party. It should not belong to the same state to which it is going to be appointed. It must be an eminent personality from the society and someone who has not taken too great a part in politics in general, so that impartial justice could be done. These features will ensure the appointment of an eligible person with an impartial instance. Further, the appointment should be made by the panel prepared by the concerned state legislature or by the state government, or invariably by the chief minister. This will avoid unnecessary disputes between the governor and the elected state government. Sometimes the central government needs to consult with the concerned chief minister of the state to which governor has to be appointed. The main purpose of consulting the chief minister is to ascertain his or her objections and reservations. The vice president of India and the speaker of the Lok Sabha should be consulted by the prime minister for selection of the governor, because such consultation will greatly enhance the credibility of the selection processes. Question number 4. Will the proposed National Judicial Appointments Commission ensure more transparency in the appointments of judges in higher judiciary in comparison to the existing collegium system? This is a question itself in the question. The question is about, is the proposed National Judicial Appointment Commission NJAC is better than the collegium system? First, some introduction about NJAC. NJAC, or the appointment National Judicial Appointments Commission, is for appointment and transfer of judges. It would be achieved by amending the constitution under 99th constitutional amendment following 121st amendment bill. If it would be ratified by more than half of the states of India, then it will replace the collegium system. Now why it is better than the collegium system? The features are mentioned here. Collegium system is a whole judiciary body from higher judiciary, while the National Judicial Appointment Commission will be a constitutional body, executive in nature. Moreover, the members of Judicial Appointments Commission will be nominated also, while there is no such member in collegium system. National Judicial Appointment Commission will be more transparent, variant and diversified, with the greater transparency. So it will ensure the leak-proof appointment of judges and further deteriorate the corruption in the collegium system. Question 5 says, that the National Food Security Act 2013 was introduced with the greater objective of meeting the food requirement of Indian people, but it is not beyond the criticism. Examine the criticisms associated with the act. When we talk about the National Food Security Act 2013, yes, it is not beyond the criticism. The most important, most relevant and prevalent criticism is that there are problems of public distribution system also. There are host beneficiaries. So this scheme is also not a leak proof. If we have public distribution system already, then implement such act will ensure the strengthening of the corruption system in the distribution. Moreover, on which grounds a person would be declared beneficiary is not cleared yet. Apart from it, the National Food Security Act will enhance the demand of the subsidized food, so deficit would increase of the state. And the most ambiguous part of this act is that though it ensures beneficiaries availability of the food, but it does not emphasize to increase the productivity, so it can hinder the demand and supply equilibrium. And last but not the least, after the introduction of Food Security Act, India will need again a role of Green Revolution to enhance a practice like Green Revolution 2, 3 or further. Thus, it will deteriorate the production of non-cereal products like pulses and oil seeds. So these are the criticisms of the National Food Security Act. Question 6. Discuss the pros and cons of India abstaining from vote on a resolution seeking an inquiry from the international community into the war crimes in Sri Lanka. This answer has three major parts. India's stance on abstaining from vote on a resolution seeking an inquiry from the international community into the war crimes in Sri Lanka. This has three aspects: the ethical stance, diplomatic and strategic stance. We will discuss each and every of them one by one. When we talk about the diplomatic and strategic stance, India did in its favor by abstaining from vote on the resolution. India strategically and diplomatically came closer to Sri Lanka because Sri Lanka is a close neighbor of India, an important member of SAARC and other regional organization, considering free trade agreement, considering strategic location of Sri Lanka, etc., made this decision in the favor of India. Had India not voted, or had India voted against the resolution, the clear stance or the clear message would send that India is clearly favoring Sri Lanka due to its vested interests. But if India had voted in the favor of resolution, then it clearly mentioned that India is against Sri Lanka. What can be done? That can shift Sri Lanka pro-China and pro-Pakistan axis. In past, India had voted against Sri Lanka on two occasions. That could only move Sri Lanka towards China-Pakistan axis. So these are the diplomatic and strategic part. But when we talk about the ethical and other grounds, by abstaining from the voting, India loses its ethical grounds. Here we clearly mention that a country which is facing charges against the humanity or the war crimes, by abstaining, India sent a message that it is not ethically sincere about such issues at global level. While at one stand we are talking to be a permanent member of United Security Council, we are avoiding such issues at local level, which only signifies that India's stand is not clear and it is governed by an ideology as of a soft state, and its internal and boundary situation are affecting its international outlook of decisions, and such weak decisions would further decline a demand of India to join permanently an international agency or at international forum like UNSC. This was the pro and cons of this question. Question 7. The right to none of the above or nota will not be much effective in cleansing politics till a minimum percentage of polled votes are not made mandatory to win elections. Discuss. None of the above nota was introduced after a public interest litigation. It was introduced by Supreme Court of India. What nota signifies? Nota signifies the withdrawal. Nota signifies the withdrawal from the representation. Nota does not provide a solution if major chunk of votes are in favor of nota. Then what is the solution? Where to choose and whom to choose? Nota does not provide for the solution. So thus we can say that it is a negation but not a solution. Though when the number of votes under nota are quite high, it can affect the policies and the representatives of the particular constituency or the assembly, and it would be a grave concern for the political parties as well, but nota in as such does not provide a solution. Moreover, if the percentage of nota is below a certain level, it cannot be considered. So nota will automatically fails. The notion and the important objective of nota fails accordingly. Question number 8. The Indian electoral system should make a shift to proportional representation system from the current first past the post system in the current political scenario. Comment. The question whirls or revolves around between the difference of proportional representation system and the first past the post system, or here the question is oriented towards the positive aspects of the proportional representation system. So why we introduce first past the post system? That is based on the literacy. Introducing the first political election in India, first general election in India in 1952, we felt that India's literacy rate was not up to parameter or not up to the mark that it could be introduced the proportional representation system. That's why we introduced first past the post system. But now the situation has been changed. Now we have to review the system of the first past the post, because the most The most important drawback of the first past the post system is that the large number of votes are wasted. There is a wastage of voting. So the votes which are against the winning candidate or the votes secured by the runner up, will they have no value? Is the question. No, they have their own value as well. But to finding the value of the casted vote to the runner candidate will ensure only when we calculate on the basis of the proportional representation. The best part of the proportional representation is that in this system the minority community is also has its say. Moreover, the government which is formed through proportional representation is representative in the best sense. Proportional representation ensures greater voter participation because everyone is assured that his or her vote are not getting wasted. So these are some important points. Question 9. Discuss the justifiability of the pleasure of the President for the office of Governor of State in India. Very basic question of Indian polity. What is the pleasure of the President? What does it mean? It means only that there is no certain or unfettered or absolute discretion in terms of power and time. The doctrine of pleasure is from British law, and when in certain democracy there is rule of law, then what is the pleasure of the President? Here it means that especially in the case of governor, it means that he or she will enjoy the office till the pleasure of the President. But we have seen that in case of BP Singhal versus Union of India, the Supreme Court of India decided that the doctrine of pleasure is in its absolute unrestricted applications does not exist in India. Moreover, doctrine of pleasure is not a license to act arbitrarily and whimsically. So we can see when government changes, the pleasure of President also changes, and governors are forced to resign, changed or sacked capriciously. Question 10. The problem for blind people is not the disability but the availability. How will the Marrakesh Treaty recently ratified by India help to blinds? We know that India is homeland of the largest chunk of population of disability in the world. Maximum number of blind people live in India. A great step towards the addressing of the problem of persons with disability came in force in June 2013 when a treaty was signed at Marrakesh, Morocco. Under this treaty is to create a set of mandatory limitations and exceptions for the benefit of the visually impaired and otherwise print disabled. It requires contracting parties to introduce a standard set of limitations and exceptions to copyright rules in order to permit reproduction, distribution and making available of published works in format designed to be accessible to visually impaired persons. As far as India's stand is concerned, The ratification by India will facilitate importation of accessible format copies from the member states by authorized Indian entities and such as educational institutions, training centers and other government bodies. These are some benefits under Marrakesh Treaty which India will get after ratifying this treaty. Question 11. Protection of environment has become a cause of global concern. Discuss the provisions of Indian Constitution associated with the protection of environment. Okay friends, the protection of environment under the vision of Constitution can be envisaged from the preamble itself. Preamble DPSP mean Directive Principles of State Policy and Fundamental Duties. One by one we will discuss. In preamble, it is based on the humanitarian and socialist model. As far as or DPSP is concerned, it is based on the Gandhian philosophy in which the cottage industries and khadi is promoted. That is sustainable in nature and eco-friendly as well. Apart from it, Article 48A of DPSP mandates to protect the environment, and in fundamental duties under 51A, it is clearly mentioned to protect and improve natural environment, forest, lake, rivers, wildlife, etc. Apart from it, Article 21 guarantees fundamental right to life and conclusively the right to healthy environment a part of it. So we can see in nutshell that to protect our environment, to conserve our environment, it is mentioned lot of places in Constitution. If we infer that this question was totally based on the information, hence no more analysis is required. Question 12. The Model Code of Conduct are the guidelines issued by the Election Commission of India for conduct of political parties and candidates during elections, but they need to be enacted properly by the Parliament for better compliance. Comment. Friends, it's very obvious, any law or regulation, until and unless it is in full accordance and compliance, it would be a waste. So, the Model Code of Conduct or the ethical guidelines issued by the Election Commission is not an exception in itself. Here we find that the Model Code of Conduct issued by the Election Commission of India intends to provide a level playing field for all political parties, keep the campaign fair and healthy, avoid clashes and conflicts between parties, and ensure peace and order. It aims to ensure that the during ruling party, either at the center or in the states, cannot misuse its official position to gain an unfair advantage in an election. Though the code does not have any legal backing, but this lack of legal support does not prevent the Commission from enforcing it. These code of conducts are the need and issue of the time. The Election Commission also has taken a stand against granting such status to the code, arguing that will only be counterproductive. This question is also an open-ended and analysis based, but the analysis is not such deep, it's very superficial. Question 13. Large number of nations in the world have bicameral legislatures, and their legislative powers are divided between both the houses. But the Senate of the United States of America enjoys status of the most powerful upper house in the world. Discuss. Again, such type of question need first half the information, the second half the analysis. While we seek first of all the information. The Senate, the upper house of the Congress in the United States of America, has got powers which are unrivaled by any other upper house in the world. A few powers of the Senate which no other upper house in the world enjoys are as under. 1. Though the House of Representatives has the exclusive privilege of introducing the money bills, the Senate has the power to propose amendments to these bills, and its approval is necessary for their enactment. This is the most exclusive power given to the upper house of the United States Parliament. Point number 2. While appointing higher officials and judges of the Supreme Court of the United States, the President cannot make any appointment without consent of the Senate. The Constitution requires the treaties concluded by the President to be approved by a 2/3 majority of the Senate. Apart from it, the Constitution makes the Senate the sole court to try all impeachments. The House of Representatives frame the impeachment charges. A committee of the House is appointed to investigate the charges. Consequently, after the House of Representatives prepares the articles of impeachment, they are transmitted to the Senate, which hears these charges by sitting as a court. A 2/3 vote of the Senate is required for conviction. And the last one, the President is commander-in-chief, yet he cannot declare war himself. Both the Senate and House of Representatives have co-equal powers for declaration of war. Question 14. Draw a comparison between the offices of Speaker of House of Commons in United Kingdom and the Speaker in the House of Representatives in United States of America. The offices of Speaker of House of Commons in the UK and the Speaker in the House of Representatives in the United States of America can be compared as following. We know both these are the lower houses of the respective parliament, means House of Commons and House of Representatives. In UK, the election of a speaker is unanimous. The opposition is always consulted before his name is proposed, and if the opposition objects, his name is dropped. In the United States, the election of the speaker is a contested term. It means in USA, the post of speaker is filled by election, while in UK it is unanimously elected. In the United Kingdom, the speaker is returned unopposed from his constituency as many times as he intends return. But in the United States, he has to contest elections to be re-elected to the House of Representatives. The speaker in the United Kingdom becomes a non-party man immediately after his election to that office, but the Speaker of the House of Representatives actively and openly identifies with his party. Not only this, friend, the rulings of the Speaker in the USA are not final. While a majority of the House of Representatives may overrule a rule by the Speaker, in contrast, the ruling of the British Speaker is final. The Speaker in the USA takes part in the debates. He also has a right to cast his vote. But in UK, the Speaker never takes any part in the debates and never votes except when there is a tie. Question number 15 is from India and international relations, or the bilateral relations. South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC, was set up to develop political and economic cooperation in the region, but it did not succeed to get the expected progress. Outline the constraints which have hindered the working of SAARC. As you people know, SAARC was established in 1985, an 8-member organization headquartered in Kathmandu. The development potential of this group has been hindered by various factors like India's bilateral issues with other countries like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh takes a toll on the development of SAARC as a powerful regional group. The member countries have not been able to achieve significant cohesion and connectivity compared to other regional organizations such as the European Union. Members nation Member nations accuse each other of abetting separatist and secessionist forces. Member nations accuse each other of abetting separatist and secessionist forces on their lands. Rather than dealing with the problem jointly, member nations are becoming increasingly isolated from each other. Moreover, when we compare an association like SAARC or an organization like SAARC to European Union, we find that in SAARC nations there is huge regional and cultural diversity. That's why it has failed to resolve the deadlock regarding several key issues and conflicts in South Asia. Another problem is that there have been no concrete steps towards major initiative for peace and development in this region. SAARC has not been able to make headway for key issues such as collaboration on initiative to counter terrorism. The political instability, especially in Nepal, Pakistan and Afghanistan like countries, also a grave issue. Question 16. Evaluate Indian stand in the World Trade Organization on trade facilitation agreement and public stockholding for food security purposes. You all know India's stand as a developing country, and other countries which are developed stand at WTO different rounds of talks. Recently, India denied ratification of the Trade Facilitation Agreement, that is the TFA, and argued that the adoption of protocol should be postponed till a permanent solution to public stockholding for food security has been worked out. The public stockholding involves subsidies to both the farmers and consumers in India. That is opposed by the developed nations. According to the agreement, providing minimum support prices for agricultural products is considered distorting and is subject to limits. It cannot exceed 10% of the value of agricultural production for developing countries. It is here that trade and food security collide. As per India's standpoint, India needs to continue with the public distribution system to address problems of hunger and malnutrition, but its membership with the World Trade Organization ties its hands to subsidy. The solution was offered by India at Bali. The current method used by WTO to compute subsidy to farmers is with reference to the fixed price levels of 1986 to 1988. This method is really obsolete as the actual prices have increased several fold since 1986 to 88. The developed countries are more interested in trade facilitation. As negotiations proceeded, India saw reluctance on the part of some developed countries to deal with the issue of public stockholding. The possibility of permanent solution to the issue of public stockholding by the 11th Ministerial Conference would reduce substantially once the protocol on trade facilitation was adopted. These were India's current stand on WTO rounds of talks. 17. The status of India after declaring itself as a nuclear power has been changed in the global strategic scenario. Should India follow the policy of a continuous review of its nuclear doctrine after a definite interval? Defense policy is not a rigid or constant policy. It requires to be changed according to the changing strategic scenario of the related country. Friends, as India got its the minimum preventive deterrence being a nuclear power state, now it is necessary to review its nuclear policy time to time. Though The nuclear power is as important as in the terms of strategic importance in terms of the energy self-sufficiency. The Indian nuclear doctrine was officially declared for the first time in 2003, and the most significant content of the doctrine was no first use, which means not to use nuclear weapons as a means of warfare unless first attacked by an adversary using nuclear weapons. Following are the reasons for the review of the nuclear doctrine. Since India has no chemical, biological or biochemical weapons, opening of a nuclear option to make a counter attack against such weapons should also be considered. India-Pakistan relations have not been smooth since 2611, and in this case, a no first use policy cannot be a complete guarantee against instability in our neighboring countries. Pakistan's induction of an extremely short-range battlefield tactical nuclear weapon has undermined the tenuous strategic ability on the subcontinent. This, coupled with Islamabad's inability to prosecute those involved in the 2008 Mumbai attacks or to assure that such attacks will not reoccur, poses a challenge to New Delhi. Moreover, if nuclear power weapons are controlled or come into the control of the terrorist group, then no first use policy would be null and void. India's imminent deployment of submarine leg of its nuclear triad makes the current demated and de-alerted posture nearly obsolete, as the weapons and delivery systems will be on the same platform. Apart from it, if India wants to examine and update the nuclear command and all its functionaries to avoid any accident, the nuclear doctrine should be periodically reviewed. Thus, this was a brief introduction about the answer of this question. Question 18. India, which was once the stalwart defender of Palestinian cause, has refused to pass a resolution condemning Israel for its recent invasion of the Gaza Strip. Analyze the Indian stand. In past, India has been spoke or an advocate of Palestine. But in recent past, the strategies have been changed. The Indian government's refusal to pass the resolution was criticized as an act of a spectator when Palestinians were being killed in Israel attacks. Though the government said that there is absolutely no change in India's policy to fully support the Palestinian cause while maintaining good relations with Israel, there is a noticeable shift in India's policy from what was once uncompromising support for the Palestinian cause to strong ties with Israel. India is seeking to find a balance between Israel and Palestine. To condemn one party would not be appreciate or appropriate choice of action. It voted against Israel at the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, citing the steep escalation of violence. India was one of the first nations to recognize Palestine's cause, and it was the first non-Arab state to recognize the Palestinian Liberation Organization as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. But in the last 2 decades, defense and economic interests have transformed into Israel ties. Moreover, India's domestic and external affairs policies and its big concern associated with cross-border terrorism do not allow it to go with Hamas, which is seen as an organization that supports terrorism as a means. It seems that India is following the policy to maintain equidistance in the above matter, which is an adequate way to protect its interest in West Asia. Question 19. How far the 73rd Amendment Act 1992 of the Indian Constitution, introduced with the greater objective of the decentralization of power, fulfills its aims? Critically evaluate. The 73rd Amendment Act 1992 of the Indian Constitution was introduced for the establishment of the Panchayati Raj system in rural areas. The aim of the Act is decentralization of the political power and introduction of inclusive democratic system at the grassroots level. In pursuance of this Act, 3 tiers of panchayats at village, regional and district level have been constituted. The Act provides for reservation of significant number of seats for women, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. It also introduces a mechanism to tackle development requirements at the local level along with politicization of the people. But due to a number of barriers in its proper implementation, it is still far from its goal. Participation of women in panchayats is proxy in nature, as the duties of women representatives are often discharged by their male relatives. Use of money and muscle power in panchayat elections has deviated panchayats from the spirit of democratic system. After the question 20, after the disorganization of Soviet Union, the bipolarized global system does not exist anymore. However, the non-aligned movement is still present. Discuss its relevance in present times. Non-aligned movement or NAM still has a significant role in countering one-sided, inequitable Western prescriptions on key issues of trade, development, intellectual property rights, technology, environment, climate change, energy, etc., and building pressure for consensus solution. NAM's rationale was supposed to have disappeared with the end of the East-West polarization, but this has survived as seen through NATO's continued existence even after the Soviet Union's demise. Not to mention its expansion numerically and operationally. NATO is now formally present in India's neighborhood in Afghanistan. The Cold War's end has not eliminated the fundamental distortion plaguing the post-1945 world, its excessive domination by the West. For developing countries, the Soviet collapse brought no relief in terms of strengthening multilateralism, more democratic international decision making, more respect for the principle of sovereignty of countries, etc. Moreover, democracy, human rights and Western values in general have become tools for further consolidating the West's grip on global functioning. The immediate result is US unilateralism, which has sidelined the United Nations and is using doctrines of preemptive defense, regime change policies, military intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. to further its hegemony. Despite the huge costs these policies imposed on their protagonists, the open military intervention in Libya under the so-called right to protect and the covert one in Syria show that geopolitical domination remains the center driving force of Western policies, and thus the relevance of NAM still exists. Question 21. Discuss the significance of Bay of Bengal Initiative for multi-sectorial technical and economic cooperation from Indian perspective. The Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectorial Technical and Economic Cooperation, or BIMSTEC, that is an international organization of Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Bhutan and Nepal, was formed in Bangkok in 1997. It was launched by India with the help of Thailand as a strategic initiative. It was constituted as an option of South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, or SAARC, because SAARC did not succeed in getting expected progress due to the Indo-Pakistan conflict. BIMSTEC provides India more opportunity to take initiatives which it cannot take at the SAARC level. It is a connecting link between South Asia and Southeast Asia. The important initiatives in enhancing physical connectivity include India, Myanmar, Thailand, Trilateral Highway, Asian Highway, etc. At a recent summit, it has been decided to create the BIMSTEC Energy Center for Cooperation in Energy Sector. There is also an aim for the creation of a free trade agreement. It will benefit India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal and Sri Lanka through increased connectivity with Southeast Asia. It is expected to encourage Bangladesh to open its transit facilities for India to ensure connectivity with Southeast Asia for trade and exchanges along with mutual economic benefits. Increased connectivity will help in the economic development of Northeast India too. Question 22. Briefly examine the Public Interest Disclosure and Protection to Persons Making the Disclosures Act or Whistleblowers Acts that has been passed to ensure the removal of corruption in the public affairs. The Public Interest Disclosure and Protection to Persons Making the Disclosures Act or Whistleblowers Act has been passed to ensure the removal of corruption in the public affairs, but it has some issues that need to be addressed. It aims to protect honest officials from undue harassment and protecting persons making a public interest disclosure. It provides for punishment against false complaints, but it does not provide any penalty for victimizing a complaint. Under the Act, the power of the Central Vigilance Commission is limited to making recommendations and he has no power to impose penalties. It differs on many issues with the bill proposed by the Law Commission and the Second Administrative Reform Commission's report, such as non-admission of anonymous complaints and lack of penalties for officials who victimize whistleblowers. The Act provides no time limit for any inquiry, though it is necessary to ensure proper investigation of such a case. It does not provide for witness protection program to protect witnesses during investigation and trial. The Law Commission has recommended guidelines for witness identity protection. Under the Act, the public official may appeal to the High Court against penalty for revealing identity or obstructing investigation. The Act also penalizes malafide complaint but does not specify an appeal process. Now comes 23. Undernutrition remains a major threat to the survival, growth and development of Indian children. The scale and gender dimension of nutrition in India shows that while the economy is growing at around 5%, the rates of child undernutrition remain very high. According to National Family Health Survey NFHS 3, 48% of children under the age of 5 are stunted due to chronic undernutrition, with 70% being anemic. Child undernutrition is very much a matter of gender for three main reasons. It affects women more than it affects men due to the specific nutrition needs of women during adolescence, pregnancy and lactation. Widespread nutrition deprivation among women perpetuates an intergenerational cycle of nutrition deprivation in children. Women are given the responsibility but often not the means empowerment to ensure optimal nutrition for their children. The consequences of the problem are undernourished children are much more likely to suffer from infection and die from common childhood illness like diarrhea, pneumonia, measles, malaria, etc. than well-nourished children. According to recent estimates, more than a third of all deaths in children aged 5 years or younger is attributable to undernutrition. Undernutrition puts women at a greater risk of pregnancy-related complications and death, that is obstructed labor and hemorrhage. Undernourished boys and girls do not perform as well in school as compared to their well-nourished peers, and as adults they are less productive and make lower wages. Widespread child undernutrition greatly impedes India's socio-economic development and potential to reduce poverty. Question 24. Regular audit of the non-governmental organizations or NGOs which are funded from abroad is necessary to ensure their public responsibility. Comment. Recently, the intelligence services of the Indian government disclosed that a number of non-government organizations funded from abroad were involved in the creation of barriers through agitations and mass movements associated with social and environmental issues against economic development projects of India. It created serious doubts about intentions and declared objectives of non-government organizations. Most of the NGOs, as they declare, are involved in the affairs of public welfare and they get many facilities and services provided by the government, even tax relaxation. Hence, to ensure their credibility and commitment towards their declared objectives, it is necessary to audit their income and expenditure. NGOs being financed by foreign nations in a country for international activities such as terrorism or to create social instability is considered as a means of war in international policies, and many countries to fulfill their own interests frequently use the same. To ensure that NGOs in India are getting financial assistance from adequate and proper sources and spending the money for their declared purpose, the audit of their accounts by independent agencies is necessary. Last question, question number 25. The Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act addresses the legal aspect of the problems of senior citizens, but social assistance is also required for a complete life. Discuss. Here are some key points about this question. The Government of India has passed the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act that makes maintenance of parents or senior citizens by children or relatives obligatory and enforceable through tribunals. It also provides for establishment of old age homes for indigent senior citizens, but the senior citizens' social needs also need to be satisfied to have a complete life. The Act does not address the needs of senior citizens who do not have children or property. Senior citizens often need someone's help in their daily activities. They need personal care in their frequent health complications. Senior citizens need psychological support of others, especially family members, to avoid mental disorder and feeling of loneliness. A number of people retire from their jobs and they need social support to initiate their post-retirement life. Some more points. Income of senior citizens is greatly reduced after retirement, whereas their expenditure for health maintenance goes on increasing and thus they need economic assistance. The death of the companion or spouse causes shock for senior citizens, and in such a condition they require more emotional support. State governments may establish old age homes and prescribe standards for services provided by them. However, the Act does not require them to do so. Lastly, senior citizens feel inability to adjust with rapidly changing pattern of social life and need a friendly social environment. So friends, this was overall discussion of mock 2 of GS paper 2. Thank you so much.